there's a fundamental shift for companies in how do we operate now under this new world. There's like a before COVID, a 2 years post-COVID, and a now.
Welcome back to the Data Minute Podcast. My name is Peter, head of insights at Carta, and your host. You know, there's been a lot of conversation today about startup employment. Hiring in startups is down. Compensation has changed radically from where it was in 2022. So I thought it was an opportune time to bring in Darcy Casarella, Director of Talent at NEA. She's one of the experts in my circles around how founders should think about compensation and how they should structure their teams. We touched on a lot of topics in this conversation. First and foremost, what does the talent function at a VC actually do? We then jumped into a conversation about whether or not founders should choose to hire advisors, fractional employees, or full-time executives. We touched on whether or not startups promote well and if they have clear pathways upwards through the company. We, of course, touched on salary versus equity, the changes in both of those sort of startup compensation dynamics. And then we ended on a long conversation about how all startup problems resolve back into people problems. I learned a ton from Darcy in this conversation. I hope you will too. Let's jump in. Darcy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see you. We were just chatting off mic a little bit about Italy, which you just went to and I'm about to go to. So
Yes.
So excited.
Yes. We're going to compare notes. I bought all the Brunello and Montalcino. So if there's any left for you, you should pick up whatever's left.
Thank you. I'll grab the scraps from the bottom of the bin. I wonder if you might kick things off by giving people a little bit of a sense of what you do at NEA and like maybe what the talent function at a VC fund like NEA serves to do in the first place.
Yeah, so I think it helps to go back and talk about sort of when this started and why it started. So I want to say it was 12 or 13 years ago, maybe more than that, that it used to be that VCs would just give startups money and say, okay, we'll see you at the board meeting, come back whenever. And there was more money available in Silicon Valley than there were great deals, great companies to give the money to. And so it became even more competitive. So what happened is the VC said, what other value can we add to this situation? How else can we help you? And they went to the founders and said, what else, what can we do? How can we help you? Mm-hmm. And they said, listen, we know this one thing. We're technical. We understand how to do this. And we want to build this particular thing. Or we came out of one of the big tech companies and this problem was crushing us over and over. We're going to go tackle that problem. But they hadn't been in charge of, maybe they hired engineering teams in the past, but they hadn't hired a go-to-market team. They hadn't been in charge of recruiting or compensation or any of these other things. And so and they were like, we don't know where to find these people either. Right. So then the VC started bringing in talent people and said, hey, we need to hire C-suite. The people are the most important part of this, right?
Yep.
80% of the money we're going to give these people is going to hiring people.
Yep.
Help them do that better. Help them find the right people. They need excellent people to go make that company take off. Where are they going to find them? How can we help them do those things?
Right.
So there's three of us on the talent team at NEA. And we have, around 450 companies, so a lot of companies. Yeah. Everybody has a different approach to this. Each VC has a different approach across their talent teams, and we all do this a little differently. We've all approached it different ways, but the sky's kind of the limit in the ways that we can help our companies from a talent perspective. And so it depends on the makeup of your team. It depends on, what your partners care most about, what the kind of the structure of the fund. So NEA has a healthcare team and a tech team, and the healthcare team does biopharma, medical services, medical devices, and the tech team is enterprise and consumer, and then seed to growth. So we're helping companies across all different sectors at all different stages, right? Yeah. If you're just a seed fund and you're helping only small companies and only in, say, consumer, okay, now we've narrowed the focus. Now I can build a talent function around that particular thing, right? So everybody, depending on the fund structure, depending on the goals of the VC, you have to, back your way into what's the right strategy as a talent partner. So everybody does things a little differently. But there's a lot of different ways that we can be helpful in that right? Compensation is I probably spend 30% of my time talking about compensation with founders and heads of people. That is always a tricky one. As you know, it's not a clear science. It's not an exact, it takes a little bit of.
And with this market, even more so. So much change. Yeah.
It's always, every market has its own like layers of complexity and layers of challenges, right? 2 years ago, we would have said it was crazy. There was so much money getting thrown around, and you're like, we can't find people anywhere. We don't know where to look. We're not getting anybody to accept any offers. So it's a different market. There's more people available, but compensation has changed rapidly, right? In the last year and a half. So you're like, what's the new look and feel of this? How do we do this now? So that's always a hard one. And it's good to have a third party who's like, I'm not in-house. I don't know any of these people, so I'm not. Right. There's no personal pull for me one way or another.
I was going to ask, is that like one of the values that you bring towards, what's the relationship like with in-house recruiting and in-house HR? Because I'd imagine that could get contentious, but maybe it's as long as there's like clear swim lanes, it's not.
Yeah, no, we are not prescriptive. We will never tell any of our portfolio companies what to do. We are there to support them and help them. Yeah. So we are like, pay it forward, help anybody, come to us, tell us what you need. It's not contentious at all. We are not trying to do their jobs. We couldn't possibly do their jobs. There's 450 companies. There's no way. We are happy to have them do. Yeah, there's no way. We're happy to have them do their jobs. We are there to support them and help them. So we have oftentimes there's like one head of people, right? Maybe she has a recruiter under her or he has a recruiter under, but it's like, they're a bit of an island, right? And so they're looking for support. They're looking for colleagues and peers. We have a community that they can, meet other heads of people and get answers.
Of people actually outside.
Yeah, not happy with mine. So they, they can connect with one another. They can come to me if it's something they don't want. It's private, right? We are literally invested in them. We want them to be successful. So how can we help them navigate this thing and, stay true to form and do it the way they want to do it? Yeah. What are best practices across 450 companies? What are the other people doing? And not just that. I mean, there's huge other people leader communities that I'm a part of and help. So what is everybody doing? What have you seen work well? We'll give them here are the 3 ways I've seen it done. What works best for your culture and your company, and how are things happening over there? So
how much time do you spend on like executive versus non-executive talent, or is it mostly they're coming to you with executive level problems?
Yeah,
or opportunities.
Right. We won't do. We're just not set up with 3 of us to do end-to-end recruiting for ICs or individual contributors, but we hate to say no, or I can't help you to our portfolio companies, right? We're like service. We're here to help you. Yep. Or like, I don't, so I don't know how to like find time to do that.
Yep.
So we have built networks. We have met lots of third parties. So contingency recruiters that we like, we'll get feedback from them, from our portfolio companies. Have you worked with this contingency recruiter? How did that go? When we get really great feedback on them, we make sure to meet them, collect their information, make them available to the. So we can be air traffic control in a lot of ways. So you have this problem. I know the 2 people for you to talk to, you decide which one you want to work with, but these 2 people can help solve that problem. You have this problem, you go over here. You have this problem, you go there. Just help them get where they need to go faster. If it's not our specialty, right? If it's our specialty, we're happy to go in and go deep with them on the topics. But if it's like, I see recruiting for this thing, like, here, go talk to this person over here. They can do the work with this party, and or maybe it's time for you to hire an in-house recruiter and do it yourself, depending on where they're at in there.
When do most people start hiring in-house recruiters these days?
It depends on their growth, their projected growth, right? If you have, and it's a math problem, right? So like 10 or 15 hires over the next year, you're better off doing that internally. Now, it also depends on the role. If we have a lot of companies now, data science, research, these are hard to find roles. They're hard to close roles with your startup budgets, right? They want big, high salaries.
Yep.
And they can be, you can hit a wall with your own networks or with people being willing to respond when you're a young seed company, your brand is not out there and you're competing against the very best, right? It's really hard to make a name. And so for those roles, a contingency recruiter can be great because they can add like their brand value is they've already met these people multiple times over the years. They will answer their phone call because they've been doing this for a long time and they're good at their job, right? And so it kind of, you can add some leverage to some of that.
So it allows you to just appear bigger, more credible to the right kind of technical talent.
Right.
Maybe otherwise just not really taking your emails.
Yeah, what is that company doing? There's no way am I,
not leaving Google to do X,
Right, exactly. So they can add some leverage there. So that's, but if it is, some of the, and it depends on, you can hire some great technical recruiters who are great and can pull you over the line. Sometimes you have recruiters that are like not technical. They do other roles, like they can grow and develop into the other one, but like don't send them off the path without, the proper education and helping them get there.
Sure.
Meaning like if you bring in a general recruiter, don't then send them out to do your data science hiring, right?
And then expect results.
Right. Like those are hard. Yeah. So, which is to say, like, there's no one way to solve any of these problems. Definitely. There's, 5 different ways to solve it, and it depends on each particular company, what the situation is there, and how how we think we can best, approach it to solve it.
Definitely. Well, I think it's a nice transition towards the problem that a lot of companies, at least on Carta, seem to be having, which is they're just not hiring nearly as much as they did. So we'll flip a chart up on the YouTube here, but in 2022, Carta startups hired over 500,000 people, which is a massive amount of new hiring. And then in 2023, it was close to half that, 265,000 or so. Q1 just finished. What do you think of the hiring so far in Q1? How has it been in the NEA portfolio? Like, are people expanding their teams, or is it still like every single new headcount is being scrutinized incredibly heavily?
It feels like there's AI and then there's the rest of the world.
Gotcha.
So like there are there's this investor, Howard Marks from Oak Tree Capital, and he wrote this article in December 2022, and he talked about there's a big sea change in the market and everything is changing. And the thing that stuck with me the most out of the article is companies have had such great interest rates for so long that it has been like functioning your company on like a moving walkway at an airport. They are just going so much faster because the money is free and it's just easier to go. And then now with the interest rates changing, this is a fundamental shift in the economy and things are adjusting. And for how long will this stay like this? We don't know. But I think there's a fundamental shift for companies in how do we operate now under this new world. Money is much harder to get right now. It's harder to fundraise. And we are still operating and trying to figure things out. And it's like, there's like a before COVID, a 2 years post COVID, and a now. And there's like 3 different, like this one company went through these 3 major changes.
Yeah.
And how they operated in each of those was very different. And so the 2 years post-COVID was there was so much money in the market. You could raise anywhere, and everybody was like, well, the money's available. Why would I not raise? Even if I don't need the money, I might as well take it because it's available. And, if you're founder, CEO, your jobs are money, vision, and people, right? Like MVP, those are the 3 things that you care about. Those are the 3 things that you need to focus on. So when the money is available, you take the money. But then you go to deploy the money. You hired all these people. You weren't exactly sure. You were probably not super efficient with it. You're overpaying engineers because the market was crazy, and and there weren't enough of them. There's still not enough of them on the planet. So then there's like this drawback to, okay, wait a minute. Now you're not going to be able to get money. And everybody said 3 years. Plan out for 3 years, right? Yep. So sounds like the projections so far are on target, right? Because that was 2022.
Yep.
And we're still 2 years in, money's still hard to come by, right? So the hope is in another year, it will be easier to come by, but you're still trying to figure out, how do I get through another year on, these tightened budgets, these, the idea if I don't raise again, how do I get from here to
So we're shooting for
profit?
Q1 2025.
I mean,
Pollyanna.
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, I think
I would love it too.
Yeah,
Honestly,
yeah.
Having now been in startups in super easy fundraising times and now more difficult fundraising times, like when money flows more freely, there is a little bit more momentum. Right?
Yes.
It's just like feels like everything's moving a little faster.
It does, but then you see a lot of bad behavior, right? So you saw a lot of we could feel it coming. You can't burn through that much money and not build products and not have. It's just it's we know this, right? In basic economics, too much money means no efficiency.
We learn it seems as though, to your original point of it's AI and everything else, at least when we're talking to folks, there are some AI companies who are growing, spending, and behaving as though it is 2021 at the peak, and it's just kind of the same. So I'm not sure how we just internalize this capital efficient lesson for much longer than the money being tight.
Yeah, I feel like we have a maximum of 18 months to 2 years that we will remember those lessons before they're all gone. That's, I think, the maximum we can ask people to remember.
Yeah.
And we will all justify it in different ways, right? This is different. This is,
AI is different.
That way, right?
For sure. So maybe on the hiring side, is there a difference in the kinds of people that are being hired more frequently these days? I think when we last spoke, we touched on this topic a little bit about fractional. I feel like the word, I hadn't even really considered fractional executives or fractional leaders at startups before, say, 2021, 2022. I would have thought that would have went away during the downturn, but maybe I'm wrong and it's actually becoming more common.
So it's interesting because I've been at NEA for 9 years, and I can tell you for 9 years, this role has always been needed, but it hasn't been popular among founders. So the need for it hasn't changed. I can tell you 9 years ago, this made sense, and it still makes sense, which is, so fractional can be great for startups. Always have this problem of we don't have budgets to have 5 or 6 C-suite leaders. We have budgets for individual contributors who are doing the work, who are building the thing that we need built. But we do need some direction because the founder's not going to be an expert. There are a few who are experts at everything and great at everything, but most founders are figuring, they have one specialty and they're learning the others on the job, and that's normal. But they need a go-to-market, right? Maybe their engineering is their thing and go-to-market is the thing that's not their strength. So they're learning that and they want to bring in a C-suite to help them navigate that. But maybe the product's not ready, right? And so you're like, well, you don't need a $300,000 a year employee right now. We're not there, but I need to understand their point of view and how they think about things, because we're building product that we're going to take that person's going to have to sell. But I'm not sure, what piece of information do I need out of them in order to do this now?
You need the knowledge before you have the cash to actually afford the knowledge.
Right. And the C-suite, there's, we're always looking for the great C-suite person who's also willing to get their hands dirty and do the actual work.
Yeah.
But the majority of the very senior C-suite who've done this over and over are we're here to tell you what to do, not to do it, right? We can strategize with you, we can work with the leadership team, we can get everybody functioning together and lead and drive, but we're going to spend the majority of our time managing people and getting the most out of them, not, dotting the T's and crossing the I's. And most startups are really hands-on, need to just be in it, in the weeds, right? So one of the biggest mistakes we see every startup make is, oh my gosh, we saw this amazing candidate out of Amazon. They have all the experience, they do all the things. And you're like, yeah, but they weren't, they
it's been a long time since they did the work themselves.
Things,
and so people under people.
Right. And they're clearly talented and they are amazing, but maybe they're an advisor or maybe they're a fractional who you spend, they are, fractionals advisor, you can kind of call them, section them differently, right? So advisor would be equity only, and you want to set up the agreement, however, whatever you need out of that person and what they're willing to do. If they're retired and you tell them I need 5 hours a week, then fine. If you guys come to that agreement.
Would you establish it by time, or is it that you need like, I need you, hey, Josh, you're a retired CMO. I need you to set up a demand gen function.
Right.
Or is it really better to say, I need 6 hours a week from you?
Right. So that's what I would differentiate advisor to fractional,
okay.
Right? So advisor would truly be advisor, maybe it's an hour a month, maybe it's an hour a week. Like, I'm trying to think through, do I go this way? Do I go that way? Yep. Maybe it's somebody who really knows your market well, 100 different reasons why.
Sure.
Fractional is, no, I need you in-house. I need you knowing the team. I need you knowing the dynamics of the team. I need you to know how this is going to go. But maybe we've seen a lot of this with heads of people, which is great. We have senior heads of people who are all burned out and exhausted because through COVID, we put them through like the special torture of you're now in charge of understanding COVID policies and restrictions and making medical decisions for your teams, right?
In addition to sometimes messaging about layoffs.
Right. And all that. Yeah. So they're burnt out, they're exhausted, but they do want to still be involved. But they're too expensive to bring in full time. So maybe your company's 50 people, you don't need a CHRO, but you do need in-house, probably need a recruiter, you might need an ops person, and the founder doesn't know which way to send those people, what they should be tackling, what's right for them, who they should be reporting into. Like, sure. The founder doesn't necessarily want to, them reporting directly into. So you can bring in a fractional person who tells them to go right or left, put in this system in place. You should be working on this. This is the next thing you want to tackle. Mm-hmm. And helping kind of get them go where they mean to go, but also being a consigliere to the founder and CEO, right? These are the challenges you have with your team. Like, this is the leader. This is how you're going to talk through that. This is how you're going to help with that. Which, your IC ops, HR ops person is not, quite ready for that kind of conversation with the founder yet. So, but it's not, but you can't have it full time, right? Like, we can't afford them full time, but maybe 5 hours a week. And oh my gosh, what they can get done in 5 hours a week with, helping these people and helping.
Is it typically set up that this
the founder
trial period to a full time, or is it mostly, look, you're going to come in for 5 hours a week for 6 months. We're going to get through this period of transition in the company growth, and then we'll part ways and really thank you for, all the advice.
I think it's sort of market driven, right? So right now I can see this, it's like staying in place for a long time where this makes a lot of sense. If they're hyper growth, at some point they will need a full-time CHRO.
For sure.
And so, yes, if they've worked with this person and it's a great fit, you can. But, at the moment, I think the CHROs will tell you, I don't want to go back in house. I'm happy, happy being here for the hours that I'm here.
Sure.
And there is, there's a benefit to being, they're diversified with their own, right? They have 5 companies they work with.
Yep.
So they can be a little more honest with the founders than they are when they are not diversified and they are fully invested in this one company and this one founder. And that one founder is, doing something that they think, I think you're approaching this wrong. They can be a little more honest because they're like, well, it's only a fifth of my income. If that person hates me, I don't have to torture myself if I really think this is a bad idea and the wrong way to run a company.
Level of honesty as a value add, but I can totally see why the outside perspective there would be outside-ish. Right? Yeah. Kind of straddling the line between inside and outside would be useful.
Yeah. I think the CHROs certainly feel freer. I don't know if the founders will appreciate it or,
Do you see fractional being better suited for certain functions than others? Or is it you can do fractional CFO, you can do fractional CMO, like any of the functions?
Yeah, I can see a use case for each one of them at various stages. Again, the problem is always you are looking for this super senior person who's done it before and who can tell the founder exactly what needs to be done for this situation. And yet you want them to be hands-on and function with nobody underneath them and doing all. So there's always this tension of, I need an expert, but I need a doer. And if I hire an expert, they're going to hire 5 doers underneath them. And that became a very expensive, plan instead of okay, I'm going to hire the, 3 doers and then the fractional, you know what I mean? And then a fractional person to come in like that. And because we're in the market we're in, being careful about these things and prudent with your money is a better sort of approach to these things than I just need a CHRO. Now, if you're going to 200 people, if you have plans to scale quickly and you're in a market where we're scaling. So 2 years ago in 21 and 22, we were growing, everybody was growing so fast. I need a CMO because in a year from now, I'm going to have a huge marketing team and I want that person to bring in their team, not the other way around. So I'm hiring a little bit ahead of time. Same with the CHRO, right? We're 100 today, but we're going to be at 200 in a year from now. I'm just going to bring in the CHRO. They have to set up the recruiting process. We're going to set up compensation, so that we go as we mean to go, not bring them in at 200 and then they're okay, you didn't level anybody. You hired all these people in the wrong spots.
I'm spending my first 6 months here figuring out org structure and actually makes sense.
Right, because you've done it all. Yeah. So it depends on the market, but this market is sort of slow and steady. And if we stay here, fractional makes sense for a lot longer.
Gotcha.
When you're scaling quickly, yes, you need to bring ahead of.
That brings up just a sui generis question then. Do startups promote well?
What do you mean? Like, do they?
It sounded like, the gap in a lot of these startups is you need senior level expertise that can advise the founder with some sort of credibility. And then you need doers who will build and tactics and actually go out and make things happen. But that leaves open this middle layer of management. And obviously that only should exist in companies that have some certain scale.
Right.
But it seems like what are the best things that startups can do to promote internally well?
Yes. So it's funny. This comes up in compensation conversations all the time because they, I think internally the information comes back to them as a compensation problem. And I'm like, I'm like, okay, show me what you guys are paying everybody. Let's look at this. And I'm like, this isn't a compensation problem. You guys are paying market, like you're within the ranges here. This is market. What else is going on over there? Like this is not your only trigger, right? This is not your only currency to use with employees. Performance, personal development matters, right? So did you ask any of your employees, what path they're on with their career? What would they like to do? What are they enjoying about their job? Maybe they don't know, but when has anybody ever asked you, what do you want out of your career? I mean, it's just such a simple question. Like, oh, you actually care about me and what I'm doing and where I'm going? Right. Amazing. Great.
2 years.
Totally, yeah. What do you want from me?
No, keep the equity. I appreciate the question. Yeah.
Right. Just a little bit of information about your employee and what they want out of their own lives. And then saying, okay, well, let's, help you with that thing. If you want to see a product path, again, reach out to your talent partners. They know people in all these disciplines. You can just introduce them to somebody that might be helpful. Anybody will take a 30-minute conversation and help you think through it and talk through it. Just be a little bit helpful to their personal development and where they want to go and what they want to do. So it's hard. Founders are it's just triage. You are just trying to survive, right? And the development is, that's another level of sophistication that, a lot of startups just aren't at. And as they get bigger, they understand we have to keep these people here. So what does it take? How do we set that up? And they get better at it as they get bigger and bigger. But in the beginning, it's very much just blocking and tackling and doing everything we can to solve today's problems. Development feels like a lovely, beautiful,
it's wonderful, nice to have.
Yeah, it's nice to have, but they don't see it. It's not. It's a need to have. You have to care about your employees. And like I said, it doesn't have to be the sophisticated plan. It just, especially if you're 20 people, it's not that hard. Yeah. And make sure everybody at this company gets asked, what is it they want out of their career? That took 3 seconds. Find out the answer. Spend the next half an hour doing something about it. Connect them to somebody that might be helpful to them. Do something along the way. It doesn't have to be this HR puts together this, 12-point plan of how we're going to develop yes, when you get to 1,200 employees, you need plans, right? But at 20 people, ask them what they want and see if you can be helpful.
You don't need the Google 20% time thing where you're introducing them to new hobbies and everything. You just want to like make sure that you care about them and that's obvious.
Right. And they're getting, what they want.
Yeah.
Some sort of development, give them the space to do that.
So you mentioned something that we were going to touch on later, but I think this is a perfect opportunity to jump into compensation, which, again, reference the chart up on the screen at the moment. This is maybe the biggest, I don't know if it's underrated, but most people aren't really talking about its story, I think, in startups right now is just salaries flat-ish, maybe a little bit up since November of 22, and equity down a third or more. So I guess the broad question is a couple questions. One, why would one part of compensation change so much when the other hasn't moved basically at all? Like, why is it so much easier for equity comp to change than salary comp?
I think, sadly, the understanding of equity still isn't, it's just still not fully understood by both the employee and the employer, right? I don't think they're all using, again, when you're young, you're just kind of triaging and trying to figure things out. You're not making sophisticated decisions around compensation we have a few founders who I meet them for the first time. They've just, raised their first round and they are like, okay, you should think about compensation and how you structure it. And there's a couple that are like, here is my 5-page memo on, and I'm like, this is amazing. You have thought about this and that's great because probably 80% of the money we give you is going to these people. Gotcha. So I'm glad you've been thoughtful about it, right? Most of them are like, yeah, can you send me those reports? I've never seen them. I've never had access.
So they're only really thinking about comp in terms of the next person I hire.
Right.
How much do I need to pay them?
Right. What do they, and that's how compensation questions come in. And then we sort of try to take them into, okay, these are actually bigger questions than you're asking. Let's jump on the phone and talk through it. But it's like, I need to hire this person. What should I pay them?
Yeah.
You're like, well, what's the rest of the situation over there? It's all relative, right? And it's the same for equity, right? They'll be like, what's the right amount of equity? I'm like, well, it kind of depends. What's the plan over there? What, percentiles are we working with? What stage of company? Where are we based?
How fast are you expecting to grow?
Right. What's your, what does your hiring plan look like for the year? So, I don't know. I do think equity goes through cycles of, I think equity is susceptible to the media the way the rest of us are, which is when everything is a riff and none of that equity turned into anything, people don't respect it and appreciate it. And so they left their company and they're like, well, the last 2 companies that I went with, nothing came of that because I left after, 6 months, right? We saw a third of people are no longer with their company. Yep. So, that was 2 years ago. So some of them might have hit their 1-year cliff. Yep. A lot of them probably didn't hit their 1-year cliff. Yeah. So it just didn't come into anything, right? And when you see that enough times, you lose respect for it. And we don't have any IPOs going on. Right. So nobody media is talking about, what was it? The guy at Facebook who painted the wall and made $1 million, whatever it was, right? Yes. Yes, right. So those stories, I think, permeate through Silicon Valley, and people think about them in a way that's that's amazing. That person worked in the kitchen and is now doing this. I can work in a kitchen. I'm going to where I want to be able to buy my house one day in, San Francisco.
That's such an interesting point on the equity comp as a wave, right? Nobody thinks of salary that way.
Right.
Of course I need the salary.
No, yeah, I need to live.
I need to live. I have obvious expenses, but equity is either a major reason I'm joining or a lottery ticket.
Right.
And if the lottery ticket, if I've done the scratch offs the last 3 companies and there's been no hits on those scratch offs, and I'm just less likely to negotiate or care about the scratch offs at the new company because I'm assuming it's going to be a 0 too.
Right. So I think it comes in waves. And then when you see a lot of IPOs and you're hearing the stories that, this person from this did this and that, then, the appetite for it all comes back and then they'll start negotiating equity again as something that they care very much about. But right now, I think when it's quiet, there's no IPOs, you're not getting the ripple effect from the media of how valuable equity can be.
What are the conversations like at the executive level? Because I'm assuming those are slightly more sophisticated than the general, like entry-level employees?
Yeah, they're
Like are execs asking for more cash instead of equity? Are they trying to rotate the percentages that way?
so I try to be really careful here. Yes, it depends, right? If they've had a windfall before in equity, there are plenty of executives who are then very attractive, right? Like they IPO'd this company.
Right.
You're like, great.
Yeah.
Like they know what they're doing. We're going to bring them in. And they have a lot of leverage because they're kind of an outsized talent for, your 30-person startup that's just getting off the ground. You're bringing in this amazing person. You're kind of like, I'll give them whatever they want. I just need help, right? Yeah. And so occasionally they'll be like, pay me in the 10th percentile for comp or even less than that, but I'm going to push on equity. And the conversation then for me, the concern is, okay, but you're now giving somebody who's already had like a major windfall the equity only and no cash. And what will happen is in 10 years from now, 5 years from now, you'll bring in a new HR leader. She's going to look at all the comp tables and she's going to be like, why does this guy not have any cash? Yeah. He's low on cash. Let's bring him up. But he's high on equity. Well, we're not going to cut his equity in half. We can't. So here it is. So now he gets both cash and equity.
Wow.
So, and it's inevitable at startups because the turnover side, nobody remembers the reasons for making decisions we made 5 years ago. We barely remember our decision making like a month ago, right? So nobody's going to remember that. They're going to end up with both anyway. You're sort of...
Bit of a hack then.
Yeah, I mean, yes, if that's what you're looking for, pick one or the other. Or it goes both ways. So if you pick cash only and save on equity, eventually some HR person will come in and say, they're off on equity. We need to bump them up. Okay. Yes. So I'm careful of that. I'm also, listen, the people that you're trying to, if you let people decide whether they want more cash than equity, there's going to be a single mom who's like, leave the equity. I need all the cash I can survive with right now. Give me everything, leave the equity. And when you're ringing the bell at the, NASDAQ, how do you feel about that single mom that you didn't give any equity to because she negotiated cash up front? So I'm more in the like, don't use that toggle to go back and forth. Try to keep it pretty consistent. At least have a consistent philosophy around it, because I think in the end, that's probably, you're going to run into trouble.
Right. Do you think that there's been, I guess the last question on equity, which we are getting more frequently now, is less about new hires and more about current existing employees. So like refresh grants or, promotion. This gets back into like, do you have an actual set ladder for your compensation structure? Or do you understand when you need to promote people through the company? Right. And how do equity grants change for people who've been there 2, 3, 4 years?
Right. I think, okay, so we have a lot less people who've been there 2, 3, 4, right? True. We have a few that have.
True.
NEA is a little allergic to the word refresh because we're not just refreshing people's equity for the heck of refreshing people's equity, right? Like nobody's entitled to equity, right? Like, yes, everybody at a company should be getting equity because we want you all rowing in the same direction. We want you actually invested in the company and actually everybody moving it forward. Yep. But we like to consider them retention or performance grants, right? So we are here because they have performed and they deserve the next level. Or
they've earned the addition.
Right. They've earned it. We're not just giving it away because they hit this,
for sure,
mark. And I do think it's worth sort of taking a look at the company and everybody's, each individual's situation. One of the challenges with comp that's like really hard to navigate, like in 2022, the equity was high, the cash was high, everything was high, right?
Yeah.
And there were moments where if you were hired 6 months earlier, your equity was way lower, your cash was way lower, you're doing the exact same job, but the market got so much more competitive 6 months later, right, that they are, it's the same job, but they're making more money. So you're like, how do we justify this? How do we make sense of this? Right. Well, it's, the same now. Now that the market has retracted, you're going to offer less equity, you're going to offer less cash, but there's people who are legacies who've been around who are making like way more. And it's just a hard thing to always navigate with these companies. The markets change, the numbers change, and it's hard to know how to keep up with that. So for retention grants, it's similar. You go to look at these retention grants and you're like, well, this person came in at a high point at the market. They have a ton of equity still. Yeah. This person came in at a low point in the, so maybe we do, give them more, but not necessarily everybody at the company gets their, grant. But there's a few different models. There's a surge model. There's a boxcar model. These are all, I think the most common mistake is to kind of layer equity upon equity accidentally. So in the third year, you should talk about what the retention grant will be. It should not start until the fourth one is completed, right? So that you're layering on. I think the mistake we see is they give it to them then and you like doubled their equity for 1 year because you started it a little bit earlier.
You visualize that. It's like one Lego block at year 3, but then you have the second grant starting at year 1 on year 3.
Right.
Or year 4, excuse me. And so the most equity they will ever receive is actually that year. You've actually double incentivized them to leave after year 4 because they're like, whoa, I got so much more. And now the remaining grant is less retentive.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So spread that out. But you can grant it at your
You can boxcar grant it.
Yeah.
Grant it up front and they'll know this will kick in once year 4 ends.
Right. Yeah. So that it maintains and but also then your strike price is lower too.
Yes.
Because you're right. So then you get a little benefit of that and you can talk them all through this, make sure they understand it.
Yeah.
But that keeps them all in, continue to be invested and helping the company move forward. But I wouldn't say they're like refreshed or entitled to it because, like I said, they come in at different phases of the economy and where we're at. And so sometimes you're like, whoa, that person's really high. If I give them more, so maybe they get more, but maybe it's, by percentage less than the person who came in low in the market and use that to even them out.
You got to balance like market dynamics and also fairness within your actual ownership structure. And that makes sense. Yeah, definitely. Maybe to, wrap up here for a moment, I wondered if there were any things that have popped up in the last quarter or maybe last 6 months that you are finding founders are like particularly struggling with? Like, what are the biggest questions that they're coming to you and asking at the moment?
It's interesting. I think AI founders are like data science research. Mm. They have different challenges, and they are kind of where the rest of our founders were in 2022, which is looking for really exceptional talent in challenging areas. There's not a ton of them, and navigating those markets.
So AI has yet to eliminate the need for human engineers.
Right.
Noted.
And they're having problems with, comp. Like they're like, we're getting outbid at, crazy numbers for individual contributors, right? For these particular roles. So they are navigating a very specific kind of market. I think the other founders are still trying to navigate this sea change and this new economy and what can we build. We are now in our third riff and we are still trying to figure out the right product, the right customers, the right situation, and kind of navigating the new norm here.
How do you even keep morale high after 3 consecutive riffs?
The first riff, I think you can get through like, yeah, I could see how this could be better for the company, right? Of course, I'm sad for my friends that are out of a job, but for the longevity of, those of us who remain.
From the viewpoint of the employees that are still there.
Right. Yeah. Like we can see how this is the right thing for the company and we can get on board with that, right? The second one is, what's the reason for this? What's the plan? A lot of companies are like, actually, we're not doing a riff for financial reasons. We have pivoted the product now that we've had this hard situation that has forced us to be more specific about what we're doing. Maybe we started the second product over here and we started this one over here because money was free and we had all these ideas and we wanted everything. And now, well, no, we're not going to do these 2 anymore. And so these teams are no longer kind of the core strategy. And so I've seen a few of those in the last 2 months where it's not a financial thing. It's a core strategy change, which all healthy, responses to the market.
Sure.
That we have to change direction. And this is the direction that we think is going to be the most successful and the most, prudent with our money. And how do we, get there and stuff? We're going to do a little bit of everything and see what sticks. I think that's like a luxury we don't really have anymore.
For sure.
Unless maybe you're an AI. Still.
If you can find the deep technical researchers.
Right, to do it. Right. Which is still pretty expensive.
Yeah.
So
that's tough.
I don't know. There's a founder. I think there's no end to founder problems. They have so many. It is a hard job. And it's challenging. It's challenging in any market when money is one of your most important things and there's not a ton of it to go around. Like that's tough for people. If you've been able to raise, then you're looking for the people. Like you always feel like you're on a treadmill, kind of trying to capture that next thing. And to those that go out and are willing to like take on that challenge, like respect to you guys. Go.
We salute you.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
You guys and gals, I should say. I say guys in the generic.
Well, Darcy, this has been great. I know that not every founder has a talent team or you to leverage this way. So hopefully this was helpful with them. But I really appreciate you being here.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good to see you.
You too.